Hi, greetings from the Pacific Northwest. Bo here. Recently, I had gone to a record show in Seattle, and I found a record I've been looking for a long time. West Coast pop art experimental band record. Where's My Daddy? Controversial cover, controversial title. We'll delve into that a little bit. So it got me kind of thinking about the West Coast pop art experimental band. It's a band I do enjoy a lot. Bob Marley has a very sullied reputation, allegedly, for his proclivity for underage women. I'm not going to delve into any of that because I don't know anything about it. It's all alleged stuff. Bob Marley has passed away. But I do like the music. The music is not about Bob Marley. Bob Marley was basically the money guy behind it. He came from spoiled background. I believe his father had been a lawyer. He was a trust fund dude. One night he threw a party at his mansion. I believe it was a beach house or mansion. And the Yardbirds supposedly played this party. And you notice all the girls that really liked the Yardbirds. So he was like, wow, I'd really like it. And he'd had some involvement in music. He'd been a host of a TV show in Oklahoma in the 50s. He'd written a couple of songs and released a couple of songs apparently in the very early 60s, marginal songs. But he noticed how much the girls seemed to like the Yardbirds. So I believe Kim Fowley, who had a similar reputation, allegedly at one time, introduced him to a group of people at the party. I believe they were a folk act, kind of a bird-style act known as the Laughing Wind, which consisted of the Harris Brothers and Michael Lloyd. He fronts them. They become the West Coast pop art experimental band. They release their first record. I don't have it. I don't know. Anybody has it? I think there's a reissue that Sundays may have done a few years ago, and I don't have it either. I believe it came out on the FIFO label. It's really hard to get. Some people even said it doesn't even really exist. Whatever. So I don't have that. So we're going to start. To me, is the beginning, and this is the first commercial album. This is on Reprise or Reprise. We're going to say Reprise. This is the West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band, Part 1. And of course, it is. This is a stereo copy, but it's on the original Tricolor Reprise label. Let me put my glasses on real quick here so I can see a little bit. Shifting Sands is on here. Lila is a great song. They cover High Coin, which was a Van Dyke Park song. Also recorded, I believe, by the Charlatans, another California band. They were a Northern California band. West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band, of course, were from Southern California. But they're famous really for their psychedelic music and their light show. So this is where it starts. They cover Frank Zappa's "Help I'm a Rock," which Hannah really liked. I played this album earlier. She really liked that song. So there's their first record. This video is going to be more about Michael Lloyd. So Michael Lloyd gets frustrated with Bob Marley and he leaves the band. The Harris Brothers stay. And this is they were Sean and Dan, of course. And this is the next album. This is Volume 2, which I'm calling 2, but it's really 3. But for what purpose? In the Arena is really good on here. Supposedly Gave a War and No One Comes. But the song on here is Smell of Incense. Southwest FOB, and I think Dan just showed that record. He found that at a show. A record store, maybe in Spokane it was, I can't remember. Had a small hit with that. Southwest FOB, of course, had Fogelberg or Coley or one of those guys. Or one of them and their brother, something, I don't know. But anyhow, so this is also a stereo copy. It's an original. Volume 2. So it's down basically to these three guys for this album. Also a good record. They're not finding the commercial success that they expected at this point. So the third album, this is my favorite of the three. It's not the best. The best is the first one. But my favorite of the three is this one. This one's really dark. This is the West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band, A Child's Guide to Good and Evil, also known as Volume 3. This is on the 2. This is an original. It's on the 2-tone Reprise. This is really dark and psychedelic. And the Harris Brothers, as you can see, putting up with Bob Marley, starts to wear on them because they were actually quite young. They look like they're in their 40s, but I think they were in their mid-20s at this point, or early 20s. And so hanging out with him had worn on them. And the track on this, well, I mean, you can kind of see where Marley's going, because 18 is over the hill. Like that doesn't say kind of what he was maybe about. our drummer always plays in the nude. It's pretty funny. But the song on here is "A Child of a Few Hours is Burning to Death." Very dark look at the Vietnam War and how people would sit around and watch the news. But so Michael Lloyd's gone at this point. He left. He'd had enough for those two records. They talk him into coming back because they realize that they need him. Because Mike Lloyd's a very talented musician, very talented songwriter. So he comes back. He helps them. He's not part of the band here, but he does write a couple of the songs. He co-writes "Where's My Daddy," "Where Money Rules Everything." This is one that I just recently got. This is "Where's My Daddy," and this is on the Amos label. This is an independent label, I do believe. Might have been Bob Marley's label. I'm not sure. So, let's see. Not One Bummer. No, that was written by Sean Harris. A Coming of Age in L.A. So he comes back. I know he plays guitar on a couple of songs, and he helped write a few of these songs. So he came back. This is the last album that they do too as the West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band. They call it a day at that point, but they come back to do one more album. Bob Marley convinces them to come back, and it's Marley a group, but this is all of them. And Michael Lloyd is even back for this record. This is really a good record. The "Where's My Daddy" is kind of a departure. Side 2 plays more like a West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band that I'm used to hearing. Side 1, there's some jazz fusion stuff. There's some country cover kind of stuff. So they're all over the map. But this is more like what their albums had been like to me, psychedelic stuff. This is a really good record. And this is the farewell. The band is done at this point. They break up. The Harris brothers go on to do some other things. Michael Lloyd goes on. Famously, he becomes an A&R man and a vice president of records. And I can't remember for which record label. It may have been MGM, but don't quote me on that. But he writes and produces a lot of other stuff. But we're going to start with things he did on the side in that hiatus from the West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band. For example, The Smoke. And this is on Tower and it's on Sidewalk. I think on Sidewalk it might be a little bit more common than the Tower copy of this. But this is produced. It's got liner notes by Kim Fowley, so there's another Kim Fowley reference. But horn and string arrangements by Michael Lloyd. So Michael Lloyd was definitely involved in this. Dedicated Stuart Sutcliffe, the former Beatle. Another one that he and Kim Fowley had involvement with is St. John Green, and I know Vinyl Richie has shown this record a few times. And this was produced by Kim Fowley and Michael Lloyd. Pretty psychedelic. It's a pretty decent record. This one's kind of an interesting. This is on GNP Crescendo, and these are almost all covers, or they are all covers. And this is called Psychotic Reaction by the Fire Escape, and arranged by Michael Lloyd. And a couple more here. This is on Epic, I do. This is October Country. This is kind of psychedelic folk. It's a pretty good record. This one's not easy to find. It used to be a lot more expensive than it is. Produced and arranged by Michael Lloyd. So that's the kind of stuff he was doing in that intro, and then he went back to the West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band. And then, so it's going to come as a shock, but Michael Lloyd produced by Alan Osman and Michael Lloyd. So, in the back here. But this is the Osmonds Crazy Horse, and if you're like, Crazy Horse, I'm telling you guys, this thing kind of plays a little bit like a poor man's Led Zeppelin. It's pretty heavy. So, anyhow. So that's my little bit on Michael Lloyd, the West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band, and some of the side project stuff. So, just, thought I'd throw that out there. Thought it would be kind of interesting. We'll see you guys next time. I know on the other channel, Adventures in Record Digging. So if you're not subscribed to that, I do recommend doing so. We're going to be going to a few shows here in a couple of weeks. So keep your eyes out for that. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.